Hey, welcome everybody. I really hope you're having a meaningful Gettysburg 158, whatever that particularly means to you. I hope you're joining us on our channel. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. I'm Garry Adelman. We're standing on East Cemetery Hill. And for you members of the American Battlefield Trust, you can look over my shoulder and see a couple of things. One that we've already successfully done is the McKnight House off in that direction. That was a 1 acre deal, and we already have that within our holdings. We're doing some architectural studies on that right now, and an active attempt to actually preserve the War Museum. They've decided to sell. We're happy to try to preserve that key part of land where East Cemetery Hill and Stevens Knoll and the Baltimore Pike all intersect, and the restorative opportunities there are simply great. We'll see what the Park Service wants, what kind of grant funding we can get, but hopefully within the coming years you'll see a new part of the Gettysburg battlefield you hadn't seen before. Now, speaking of new, we want to introduce a new guest to you here. His name is JD. He's with the History Underground. He's got a really excellent YouTube channel. We encourage you to check out the History Underground after you subscribe to the American Battlefield Trust YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to History Underground. JD, come on up here. Welcome. And why is Cemetery Hill, where we're standing, important?
Whenever you are here at Gettysburg, probably one of the most important positions on the battlefield is right here at Cemetery Hill. That was recognized right off of the bat during the battle. So on the first day of the battle, 11th Corps Commander Oliver Otis Howard is going to ride up to this position. He's going to look out over this vista and see the town to the north. He's going to see all this open area to the east, and he's going to have a colonel with him by the name of Meisenberg. And he's going to say to Meisenberg, it's like, "This looks like a good position, Colonel." And the colonel's going to reply, "This is the only position." Okay, so people come to Gettysburg and they think of Culp's Hill. Well, Culp's Hill is important. It's important because it's protecting the right here at Cemetery Hill. People go to Little Round Top, very popular position. Why is Little Round Top important? Well, because it's protecting the left right here. This is the keystone of the battle. Now, first day, of course, the 11th Corps is going to move to the north through the town of Gettysburg. There's going to be a big fight. This is the Alamo. All right, they're going to be retreating back here. This is where Howard is going to have his headquarters, going to have his position. And on the second day of the battle, there is going to be a vicious fight that takes place up here. It's going to threaten the Baltimore Pike here behind us. That's going to threaten the Union supply line. And I'm going to turn it back over to Garry to talk about what the fighting looked like on the night of July the 2nd.
Yes, but first, some congratulations, man. I'm not sure if I knew JD was going to get down to colonel level, staff officer level, bringing in a sort of a German name for the 11th or German Corps. So way to go, man. I think one of the reasons you should check out History Underground is that JD not only knows his stuff, but he just kind of goes at this like we are, like interested nerds checking out historic sites. So you're with the American Battlefield Trust. We have a guest named JD from the History Underground. We got Andy Poulton behind the camera, and we're on East Cemetery Hill here. JD had mentioned as his last thought the idea of the vital Baltimore Pike, and I want to stress that of the 10 roads that came into Gettysburg, the Union only has access to 2 by the afternoon of July 2nd, and one is the Taneytown Road. Note it's not a pike, it's a road. It's made of dirt, but the Baltimore Pike, crushed white limestone, a nice, pretty good road, not meant for the 30,000, 40,000 Union troops coming here on it, but a good road that they could use. The Union loses that road, it wouldn't matter if they lost Cemetery Hill. If they can't control that road, they have to go and fight to get it back or go somewhere else. That's the importance of roads. You can win a battle in a lot of other different ways. Now, also before we talk about the fighting, I mean, look at all this stuff around us here. We're literally surrounded by monuments, markers, tablets, headquarters markers, cannons, and whatnot. And here we're looking at not his best side, but nonetheless, Winfield Scott Hancock, who was really responsible for helping to steady the troops here. He was that kind of guy. He happens to be my favorite general. This is a dude who could show up anywhere and command troops, and he showed that time and again. And I don't think as superb as he was at Williamsburg, I don't know if he was more superb anywhere than here at Gettysburg, where he's active on all 3 days, and he played an important role on 2 days at this particular position. Now, looking around us here too, you can see these cannons. These cannons are sitting mostly in the original lunettes, the demi-lune shaped half moon positions. They would have originally been backed sort of by nice wooden planks, probably fence rails that came from the Baltimore Pike. And this is how we know where the cannons were. The early photographs show these lunettes, okay? Almost all of them are still here too. There's a few that still confuse us, namely those behind the camera right now, but there are others, for instance, those four over there, I think that might be Reynolds Battery. I get them all confused, to tell you the truth, because they're switching guns in and out toward it. There's an 1863 photo that show all four of those lunettes and whatnot. So it helps us to understand the battle because this place is preserved, because these lunettes were some of the first places preserved on the entire battlefield. Now, July 2nd, 1863. The famous parts of the fighting, we've already covered a whole lot of it, are already raging and even over. Devil's Den, Little Round Top, the wheat field, the peach orchard, Cemetery Ridge, the Trossel Farm. And all of that is really starting to calm down by twilight on July 2nd. But around that time, the Confederate attack on this side of the line that was supposed to take place at about the same time based on the sound of the cannons. There is such thing as acoustic shadows. I'm not sure if they're in effect when they're only 4 miles apart though. So it does take a while to get a lot of troops moving. And in short, eventually, Jubal Early's division is going to attack East Cemetery Hill, or part of it. Part of the division, that is, and part of Edward Allegheny Johnson's division will attack Culp's Hill over here. So, JD, how are you liking the Confederates' chances here? What have they got going against them, if anything?
So, one of the things that the Confederates are going to have to really overcome is just this dominating position on the battlefield. I mean, if you look behind me, you can see everything. Nobody is sneaking up on you here at this position unless there's a lot of smoke and unless it's dark. That's going to help the Confederates out. Something else that's going to help the Confederates out a little bit is the condition of the 11th Corps. Now, the 11th Corps was probably what you could consider the black sheep of the Army of the Potomac. There's a lot of German immigrants. It's not a complete corps of German immigrants, as some people might think, but there are a lot. They had been whooped at Chancellorsville. It was Jackson that slammed into the right flank of the 11th Corps. Right flank, correct? All right, I got to check with Gary because he knows way more than I do. They slammed to the right flank. They got blamed for the loss at Chancellorsville. On the first morning of the battle, they're going up through Gettysburg. They are going to hit Ewell's Corps. They are going to suffer heavy losses. So by the time they retreat back here to Cemetery Hill, or withdraw, whatever term you want to use, their lines are thinned out. Okay, so you're not getting a heavy concentration of fire. These guys are having to spread out, and it's spreading out their fire. That is going to make things more difficult on them, and it's also going to allow the Confederates to break through this line and almost take the keystone position for the Army of the Potomac.
And isn't it so refreshing for you all to hear from somebody who you can actually understand, who speaks at a normal rate, whose ideas you can actually absorb before he moves on to the next thing. And speaking of which, we're actually walking toward Oliver Otis Howard. You might be able to see his statue up there. We're not against these generals. We're not just filming them from behind. It's just the way that we're walking. Trust us. You might have caught his headquarters marker up in there as well. And the 11th Corps, I agree with JD, they did get decimated at Chancellorsville, but I mean, they're just put the wrong place at the wrong time. There they are out on Barlow's Knoll at the Battle of Gettysburg, and they had no hope of holding that position against a superior force. And then here they are put into a position they don't have enough men to man. I mean, they are sort of spread out when we're up here. It reminds me of the Gettysburg movie, How You Know We Spread Out. That was my best James Longstreet, or my best Tom Berenger, I suppose, there. Let's walk a little bit further and we can talk a little bit more about the fighting in this area. By the way, the stone walls that you see here were here during the battle. They were here before the battle. The local farmers simply cleared their fields of stone anyway, so most of had to clear their fields, so they simply encircled their properties with stone walls, and they have been restacked in the 1930s by the CCC and the WPA so that we can have, the battlefield that looks as much as possible like the one that the troops saw. So as we approach Howard from a slightly better angle here, you're seeing more and more monuments. You're seeing the guns of Weidrich's battery. Somebody might tell me to pronounce that differently. That's okay. Put it in the comments and put in your favorite hashtag as well. We always love seeing your hashtags. I don't know if we'll ever top the Civil War Nerd Loser Philharmonic, but you can make an attempt if you can. Now, let's walk a little bit further so we can actually look over the crest of the hill, because this attack is going to come from two directions. And JD noted that there's no hiding. That's true. we'll try to flash up a picture here that actually will show that there was no escape here. This was wide open terrain, not only off in this direction, but off in this direction as well, okay? The Louisianians under Harry Hayes, that brigade is going to come in this direction here, while North Carolinians under Isaac Avery, Hoke's old sort of brigade here, are going to swing across all those fields you see here. You're talking about more than 1,000 soldiers, even in two lines. That's 500 men, 2 feet at a time, regiments separated a little bit, and you've got these, 500 plus soldiers trying to wheel like this. So this guy's running, and this guy's almost standing still and just pivoting, and you're trying to do that while you're under fire. Luckily for them, like JD mentioned, it's dark, there's a little bit of fog going on here, and many of the Union soldiers who are not up here with the cannons, they are positioned lower on a military crest so the cannons can still fire over their heads. But the soldiers down there don't even know the Confederates are wheeling right in front of them until it's too late for many of them. And the Southerners start to tear gaps and break through and punch through the Union line just as the Louisianians are coming from that direction over there. And they capture one stone wall, the next stone wall at the edge of the trees, the stone wall behind the camera. And before you know it, the Southerners have captured 9 cannons over here. But as it often goes at Gettysburg, in this case Winfield Scott Hancock, but others did it on other occasions, thought maybe things weren't going right and sent a couple of brigades here just in case. Okay, just in case, because the Union can spare 2 brigades to go toward the fight, and those 2 brigades are going to arrive right as the Confederates have captured sort of the crest of this very important position, and the Southerners don't have any reinforcements. The Georgians under Gordon that were supposed to arrive just weren't here yet, and it was too late by the time they could get underway, and they are going to do a pell-mell retreat after a great moment of promise. 9 cannons abandoned, the hill abandoned with their wounded atop in many cases too. So this was, a real letdown, for the Confederates here. It seems like wherever they had some success, here shows up the Union with superior forces. JD, anything to add on this part of the fight here?
There's one tragic story for the Confederates that comes from this fight right here, and it's that of Isaac Avery, who was in command of the North Carolina Tar Heels. So they're going to be making a right wheel maneuver. Okay, so they're going to be kind of like sprinting across the battlefield on the Confederate left. And shortly after, it's thought, shortly after that right wheel command, Avery is going to get hit in the lower part of the neck on the right side with a Union round. Okay, now, if you look, I brought a little Civil War mini ball with me, and it's not as streamlined as a modern round, but one thing that this thing has is mass. Whenever this thing hits you, you're going to feel like you've been hit with a sledgehammer. And if it hits you in the lower part of the neck, it doesn't even have to sever your spinal cord. Just the shock wave alone is going to shut down your central nervous system. Avery gets hit. He loses the use of his right arm. He's going to lose the ability to speak. And whenever he is found on the battlefield the next morning by a guy named Major Tate, he uses his left hand. He grabs a pencil and a piece of paper, and he writes out, "Major, tell my father that I died facing the enemy." And then he signs his name, and shortly thereafter, Avery is going to die from his wounds. One of the many sad stories here at the Battle of Gettysburg.
I think that's just great. So before I complimented him for getting down to the colonel level, now we're talking about majors. I wonder if before this is done, we'll be talking about captains and privates here. You're with the American Battlefield Trust. I'm Garry Adelman, Andy Poulton behind the camera, and we're here with our guest JD from the History Underground YouTube channel. And I really like the way JD goes at things and makes history accessible. Now, one thing I want to talk about while we're here is you can probably see some trees right over there on both sides of the equestrian statue to Oliver Otis Howard. Now, the American Battlefield Trust in 2012 and 13 negotiated a deal to actually preserve that land. The trust still owns those woods to this day. And then we also own an acre behind it. But should we open up that view? Well, if we did open up that view, you might be able to see through there. That's where the big football stadium is and soccer stadium over there. That's where the Gettysburg area middle school is. Should we open up that view so it's more like the battle and uncover that view toward modern intrusions? This is something that sort of preservationists have to deal with, all the time. What to do, where to build a road, what trees to take down. We'd love to know. Is it better to have the original view shed even if it opens up something that's non-historic? Put that in the comments if you will. Now, while we walk and presumably wrap things up here, I want to give a plug. Whoever publishes it, it has been under numerous publishers. You can get it on the used market, so I'm not trying to make anybody money here. But there's a book called A Diary of Battle. It is one of two diaries, one on each side, or memoirs that I suggest you read. One by Charles Wainwright. He's a cranky artillerist. You will not like him by the time the book is over. At least it's hard to like him. But a great diary of the war in the East. And then you have E. Porter Alexander's Fighting for the Confederacy. He had one called Military Memoirs of a Confederate, but that one was for public use. The other one he wrote just for his family. He never expected it to be public, and 100 years after he wrote it, or almost that, it went public, and it's great. So those are the two diaries I recommend. I brought this out here today because I wanted to walk over to near the end of Weidrich's guns here. You see his left piece over there, and we know that's his left piece because the lunette was originally there. The accounts also suggest it. Now, some of his guns were facing that way, I believe, earlier in the day, but I believe that Wainwright is referring to this when he said, excuse the long quote here, "I had two pretty narrow escapes." It's pretty interesting that he says pretty narrow. I mean, it sounds like modern speech, right? Maybe some of your students, JD, would use some things like that. "I had two pretty narrow escapes myself, one the closest I ever had. And in both cases, I realized afterward how indifferent one becomes to the danger when you are accustomed to the flying around of cannonballs, even to feeling that they are harmless. For in both cases, the danger was the result of carelessness. In one case, I was standing to the left of Weidrich's battery." Oh man. "Because the battlefield is preserved," and by the way, we're standing on the first 4 acres ever preserved for a battlefield park at Gettysburg or at any Civil War place. I would say the first battlefield park, but really I think Fort Ticonderoga wins out because there's a battle there before the American Revolution as well. I think it's Carry On. In any case, he said he was standing to the left of Weidrich's battery when a rifled shell struck about 6 yards from me and directly in line, burying itself deep in the ground almost under my feet. Okay, so there it is in the ground under my feet. I waited quietly to see if it would drive out by the hole it entered when it burst, or if it would break out straight up. It never occurred to me that it should come right up and would certainly hit me until it had safely blown out of the entrance. Could you imagine, JD? This thing is buried in the ground, but you're so used to this that you become hardened to war.
Yeah, I try to put myself in the shoes of the people who were here, and I can't. I mean, on both sides, Union and Confederate, they're marching on limited food rations. They've got shoes that are worn out, and then to add on top of that all of the stress of battle, it's something that is beyond my own comprehension.
And then to take the time to write it down. He at least made notes during the battle. He didn't do this a year later. I mean, it's too detailed for that. So let me continue, JD, and thanks for your thoughts. He said, "In the other case, I was passing from the left to the right of Reynolds' battery," which I think I referenced earlier, "but forgot that the left piece stood just to the rear of the others, and I passed to the front of it at the instant it was fired." Okay, one step more on my part and they would have blown their colonel as far as ever as the British blew the mutinous sepoys or sepoys. You're more into more military history. I'm not sure if I got that right.
Don't know.
So that's good. I feel a little bit better here. So I hope that when I was reading his words that you sort of imagine what the hole looked like in the ground, what it would look like when it burst out, and that's what a good book can do for you, and that's what preserved battlefield land can do for us, right? Somehow this is made more real when I can point to right where that happened. And we know where that happened because of his memoir and because the lunette and the battle accounts have survived. So I think I'm going to leave you with this, but first let me encourage you to subscribe to the History Underground, okay? JD, man, really knows his stuff. He's a teacher. He just started doing this for your students, is that right?
Yeah, I was just trying to provide a resource for people. So anything that can help people get into history and learn a little bit more.
His videos are very attractive too, and soon I think we'll be asking you for favors, man. Your thing is just growing like crazy. So to Andy behind the camera, to JD from the History Underground, and to all of you who are watching, thanks for watching, and thank you for supporting battlefield preservation and education.